didn't see it there. I was just in the middle of reading the Chicago Style book. Well, I might as well tell you a little bit about it. So, Chicago Style is an in-depth and comprehensive style of writing. It is used in numerous subjects like history, literature, art, computer science, philosophy, and business. Everyone can use this style of writing, but it is widely used by authors.
This is Kayla Benner.
And I'm with Amy Adams, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the basics of every paper. Before formulating a paper, you need to write a thesis statement. A thesis is a well-organized statement of the central idea of your paper. It typically appears at the end of your introduction, and the body of your paper should consist of evidence that supports your thesis. Before formulating a thesis statement, you should start with a research question. And in order to organize your ideas, you need to find sources that inform and support your argument. And then you need to make sure that you explain the terms and concepts you use in your paper. Support claims with valid and relevant sources and give credit to borrowed information and statistics. If you use this information directly, you need to use them in quotation marks followed by an in-text citation. To avoid plagiarism, which is an unacceptable borrowing of another source's work, you need to summarize the information in your own words. Ask yourself what the information is saying and then break that information down and explain it in your own words. Make sure you give credit to the source by entering in the in-text citation and citing the source in the bibliography. Remember to always use teacher style. For example, the teacher may want the title page done in their preferred way over the basic style.
Along with that, I will be talking to you about the tips for the Chicago Style. Example, there should be no prepositions or adverbs at the end of this sentence. Example, do not end this sentence with them, him, her, or you. Also, throughout your paper, do not use contractions. For example, like can't, change it to cannot. When you're writing your paper to paragraph, you use transition sentences. These transition sentences are usually at the end of the first paragraph in the first sentence of the next paragraph. Also, spell out your numbers that are less than 100. State names are spelled out, and you use no abbreviations. When you use block quotations, which is 100 words or more, you use no quotation marks, and you must begin in a new line. Also, for emphasis, do not use capital letters. Use italics. Leave one space between sentences and after colons throughout your paper. And another thing is, percent is spelled out. Do not use the percent sign. And lastly, the times of the day are spelled out in Chicago paper.
Just like every basic research paper, you want to make sure you include an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In your introduction, you want to be able to grasp your reader's attention. This is usually found in the first sentence that is called a hook. Also, you want to include a thesis statement, which is 2 to 3 concise sentences about the main topic of which you will be writing about. This is found at the end of the introduction and the beginning of the conclusion. Next, you want to make sure you have a body with lots of supporting details that you found with reliable sources and databases. Finally, your conclusion. You want to be able to clench your reader's attention, wrapping up all supporting details and anything else that you may have found interesting in your research.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Daniel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to format your Chicago style paper. Now, before we begin formatting your actual paper, you're going to need to pick a font style and a font size. According to the Chicago Manual of Style, you can use 2 font styles and 2 font sizes when writing your paper. The 2 font styles you're allowed to use are Times New Roman and Palatino Linotype, and the 2 font sizes you're allowed to use are size 10 or size 12 point font. Now, we can begin writing your paper. The first page of your paper is known as your cover page, which is shown here. This is where the title of your paper is located and all the other information, such as the course name, your name, the teacher's name, and the date the paper is due. When you're formatting your cover page, it is important to know where to locate all this information. According to the Al Purdue Online Writing Lab, if you were to divide your paper horizontally into 3 parts, the title should be centered in the top third of the page, as shown here, and it should be in all caps. Then, dropping down to the bottom third of the page is where the rest of your information should be located, such as your name, the course name, teacher's name, and the date the paper is due. All lines on the title page should be double spaced. Then, after you finish formatting your cover page, you can drop down and start beginning your first page of text. After you finish your first page of text, you're going to need to cite your sources, which is very important. Now, citing your sources can be quite difficult in Chicago style, but to format these, you're going to insert them in a footnote as shown here. And to separate these, you're going to insert a hairline, which is a line that separates your text and your footnotes from each other. This line is located near the bottom of your paper, right above your footnotes, and it is flush to the left side of your paper. This is just to provide division and clarity for the reader so they are able to distinguish between your text and your footnotes.
Hello there. My name is Paul Ching, and like my esteemed colleague Zach, I will be discussing the basic formatting guidelines for your Chicago-style paper. As you have done previously in MLA and APA, your paper will be double-spaced. In the upper right-hand corner, you have your last name followed by the page number. The first page is not numbered. However, it does count as the first page, so when you actually start numbering your pages, you will start with page 2. One of the biggest differences of Chicago style compared to other writing styles is the fact that your in-text citations are footnotes. Where you'd normally put your parenthetical, you now have this little floating number called a superscript. The superscript then leads you to your footnote, which is your in-text citation located at the bottom of the page below this hairline. The general format is as follows. You will put it directly underneath the hairline, no space in between them. You'll indent it 1/2 inch, and then put the Arabic number that corresponds to the superscript. Then, type the entry. The specifics of how to type this entry will be discussed later in the course of these videos. If your entry ends up being more than one line, these lines will not be indented 1/2 inch. Flush it to the left. When you have multiple entries below the hairline, the format for each of these entries will stay the same. Just make sure that you have a space in between each of them. Another distinct characteristic of Chicago style is that you take these footnotes and basically just compile them all onto a final page called your notes page. This is how you format it. At the top and center, type notes. Enter down twice, then start typing your entries. The format for these is exactly the same as the footnotes. You indent 1/2 inch, type the appropriate Arabic numeral, then type your entry. If it goes over one line, you simply flush the rest of the lines to the left. You also put a space between each entry, just like your footnotes. One thing to note here is that if you have a repeat source, you can actually abbreviate it slightly. For example, I have here Craig von Busick, How Saul Became the Apostle Paul, from the Christian Broadcasting Network in 2017. In notes 8 and 10, I have the same exact source, but I stopped after listening to the author and article title because this is enough to tell me that it's the same as the first. Finally, you have your bibliography. At the top and center, type bibliography, enter twice, then start typing your entries. Unlike your footnotes and notes page, your first line is always flush to the left, and any line that comes after it is indented by a 1/2 inch. This creates what you call a hanging indent down the rest of the page. As always, make sure you have a space between your entries. An important thing to note here before I pass this on to my other classmates, this is not how you format your citation page for MLA or APA. If you end up using this format for any style other than Chicago, you will end up using what's called the Morabito effect. This was affectionately named after a former student who apparently did this a lot, so don't do it. That's all I got for you. Good luck and happy writing.
Personal communication. Some primary examples for Chicago style of personal communication are government documents and sacred documents, such as these examples. All Chicago-style religious text citations are based on the forms used in the Jewish and Christian Bible. References to the Jewish or Christian scriptures usually appear in in-text citations or notes rather than the bibliographies. Parenthetical or note references to the Bible should include the book, the chapter, and the verse, never a page number.
A colon is used between chapter and verse. Note that the traditional abbreviations use periods, but the shorter forms do not. All legal material and government documents should be cited using footnotes, endnotes, and/or citation sentences. They are not required to be cited in the bibliography or on the reference page. Court cases should include case name, number, volume number, the abbreviated names of the reporters, and in parentheses, the abbreviated name of the court and the date. Some extra notes are that these are not usually in the bibliography. It is the teacher's preference. And primary sources, you need to include authors, title of the document, and title of the site. Here is an example.
When citing sources in Chicago style, be sure to follow these elements, but also follow your teacher's personal style. For a note, there are certain things you have to include inside of it. For a website, you include a number, a period, a space, the author's name, the title of the document, the title of the site that you found it on, the sponsor of that site, the publication date or the access date, the URL of the document page. For a book, you still include the same number, the period, and the space, the author's name, and the title. And then you have to include the city of publication, the publisher, and the year, followed by a page number. For endnotes, they follow the format that you saw before, but they are placed at the end of all your writing. The first line will be indented a half an inch. The note number is not raised in Chicago style, and it is followed by a period, so exactly as you saw in the examples. The notes themselves are going to be single-spaced, but they have a double space in between each individual note. Footnotes still follow that same format that you saw at the beginning, but they are placed at the bottom of each page underneath the hairline. In Chicago style, the note number is raised. It's in the same position it's at the beginning of the citation, but it is raised, not a regular Arabic number. The note will appear on the same page where you used that source. If you are repeating a note in Chicago style, there are a few specific elements you need to be sure and incorporate. If you're repeating them directly after another, you're going to use IBID, which I will explain later. If they're not directly after each other, you use the last name of the author or the authors and a shortened title. If the work has two authors, you separate both their last names by using the spelled out word and. When using IBID, you change the number in the second note so it matches with your quotation in the text, and you update the page number if it is different. If it's the same page number, you use IBID. So if I'm just repeating the same source that I used directly above, I would just use IBID. But then if I had to change the page number, but the same work is being cited, then you can just add a different page number, as in the example. The only real difference between endnotes and footnotes is that in Chicago style, the endnote number is not raised, while the footnote number is raised to a superscript. The endnotes are placed at the end of your writing, while the footnotes are placed at the bottom of each page.
This is it. The bulk of your paper is over. The hard work is done. Now, all that's left is throwing your sources through EasyBib and turning it in. Simple, right? Not so much. The bibliography is arguably the most important aspect of every paper. So, what is a bibliography? The bibliography is a list of all the sources used in the paper. The list includes the important publication details of the sources.
Not to be confused with the endnotes or footnotes, the bibliography is the full version of the citations used in the paper. The most basic entry of the Chicago-style bibliography contains the name of the author, title of the work, place of publication, publisher, and year of publication. The bibliography must be in alphabetical order by author and double-spaced. A book entry is simply the basic form of Chicago style, which includes the name, title, publication, publisher, and year of publication. If 2 or more authors are available, list the first author from last name to first name, and the second author from first name to last name. If an author is unknown, simply begin the citation from the title of the source. Within the bibliography, use the title of the source to alphabetize the bibliography. If the title begins with the word "the," disregard this word and use the next word in the title to alphabetize this work. Most of the sources that are used in research papers will be web sources from databases, such as Gale. A website entry is much alike an entry from a book. However, it contains a few important aspects that a book citation does not. Website entries must contain access dates as well as DOIs or URLs. When citing online sources from databases, there's often a DOI available. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier and is helpful in locating the article at a later time. DOIs are always preferred to URLs, so it is important to list them if available. In bold is an example of a DOI within a citation. If no DOI is available, more often than not, an instructor will prefer an annotated URL for web sources. An annotated URL is simply a shortened version of a web link. Often, web addresses change, so an annotated URL is often preferred to the longer version of a web link. To annotate a URL, begin with an angle bracket and then begin typing the link as is. Continue until after the .com, .gov, or .edu of the web address, and then place another angle bracket. A common addition to a bibliography entry is the retrieved by date, also referred to as accessed. These additions are particular to web citations. And that ends the portion on bibliography. If any questions still remain about citing any other special cases not explained, be sure to check out the Purdue OWL Online Writing Lab, also referred to as OWL Purdue. A pocket-style manual by Diana Hacker is another wonderful source to consult for the bibliography of any MLA, APA, or Chicago-style paper. Best of luck!